In this video, I want to share with you an exercise that will help you, hopefully, to get better at playing in all keys. Improvisation, to improvise modally in all keys. So the exercise is from this book, Fundamentals of Guitar by Miles Okazaki, one of my favorite books. And I will link to his channel where you can check out his stuff. Really, really good stuff. We also need to sort out the question, when I say all keys, how many keys are there exactly? You would think that there is an easy answer to that question, but maybe not. We shall look into that and also ask ourselves if it's actually necessary to practice in every key. And also we need to separate what is the difference between a key and a mode. But I want to get to the exercise. I will talk later on in the video about that and this book some more, but I want to get to the exercise. Some things that you will need for this exercise: manuscript paper, staff paper, and you need some kind of device to record yourself, like a loop pedal or something. I'm gonna use iReal Pro. It's not just for guitar players, actually. Anybody could do this exercise. So if you're not a guitar player and watching this, welcome. It's not just for jazz players either. I think it's important to be able to play in all keys, regardless of what style of music you're playing, even though I guess some genres tend to favor certain keys, jazz included, right? And I think that has to do with the nature of certain instruments. Like for guitar players, we prefer certain keys because of the nature of the guitar and how it's tuned. So what Miles does here is he takes the 7 notes of C major and he puts them randomly on a staff. So it shouldn't be a pattern or a cycle to it, just random as possible. That gives you 7 notes, 7 bars. So the first key is C major or A minor, which has no sharps or flats. So then if I play that sequence, that line in C major, it sounds like this. Those are 7 notes. Then I just go through the key signatures. So if I played an F major, it would sound. But we're gonna do that with a backing track. So it could be C major or it could be A minor. I'm gonna do A minor. So I have here 7 bars of A minor. So I'm gonna play this phrase, or what do you want, this sequence of notes, as whole notes over a backing track. 7 bars of A minor. It will sound something like this. Now all I have to do is go in and use the practice function and set the transposition to 5 half steps. So it's gonna go through the cycle of fifths. And I'll just do the same thing, but adjust to the new key. So the next key is gonna be D minor, then G minor, and so on. So let's do that. So here's A minor. This is gonna be B flat. Here comes G minor. C minor, A flat here, right? No. F minor. I think you get the idea. And some of you are saying, well, that's real easy. Maybe this exercise is too easy for you. Don't worry, we're gonna make it more difficult. But let's say that you think it's not easy. Let's say you are struggling, you find yourself, once you get more accidentals, more key signatures, that it gets trickier. Then you need to really stop and work, find out where your weak areas are, what keys are you struggling with, so you can maybe do a key a day and stay with one key for a while, and then come back to this where you go through all of them. So you notice a couple of things. I'm saying out the next key out loud. It just helps for me. Also, I'm trying to sing the next note. So I'm kind of working on my ear training at the same time. Also, every time you hit that flat 6 of the next key, it sounds a bit funny. Because if I'm playing A minor, you're hearing A minor, natural minor, and then there's a D minor. Well, it sounds like you're still in A minor, but that's not what we're doing. We need to kind of reset our brain and hear D minor there, which has a B flat. So it's a good, really good thing to work on, to be able to kind of hear the next key and not relate it to the previous chord you were playing, if that makes sense. So let's make it a little bit more difficult. Let's add a note to every note. Like we could add an interval, for example. So I'm going to add a fifth to every note, like just, so the first note is C, then I'm just going to play a fifth above it. So now I'm playing half notes instead of whole notes. Sounds like this. Here's the problem though, when I get to the E flat minor, that could also be considered D sharp minor. Some keys you could spell two ways. So you should actually repeat that chord twice and first think of it as E flat minor and then think of it as D sharp minor. If you want to do this exercise properly. I can't make iReal Pro do that. So that's, maybe it should be better. It would be better to use a loop pedal, but I think the iReal Pro really shows you kind of clearly what we're doing. But there is a problem there because technically we should play that chord twice because you can think of that key two ways, which is going to make this line totally different depending on which key you're thinking. So it's just a matter of perspective. So that leads to the question, how many keys are there? A lot of people answered 12. I think a lot of you have seen the video with Victor Wooten where he talks about this and he says, no, there are actually 30 keys.
Let's figure out how many major keys there are, and then we'll just double the answer for the total, which we already know. How many major keys have no sharps or no flats? How many? One. Somebody keep track. There's one. We can have a key with one sharp, a major key we're talking about. We can have a major key with one sharp. We can have a major key with two sharps. Up to how many sharps? 7. So there's 7 major keys. One that's neither. What are we up to so far? 8. Let's keep going. We can have a major key with one flat. We can have a major key with 2 flats. Up to how many flats? 7. So we have 7 flat keys, 7 sharp keys, one that's neither, for a total of how many major keys? 15. That's not rocket science. That's second grade knowledge. It should be. Double it for a total of 30 keys. My man is right.
So that's because, first off, they're major and minor. And 3 keys can be spelled two different ways. So F sharp major could be G flat major. B major could be spelled C flat major. And D flat major could be spelled as C sharp major. That gives us 15 keys, major keys, and then the minor gives another 15. So the correct answer is 30 keys, because then we get into the double flats and double sharps, and those are not really relevant, even though in theory those keys, I guess, would exist as well. However, we rarely think, or I rarely think, C flat, even though I do see that chord sometimes, because it could be a C flat Lydian, for example. So it is a good idea to practice those keys as well, but not really relevant for this exercise. I wouldn't include the C sharp and C flats, but I would include G sharp and G flat, because those two are, you should be able to think of that chord both ways. So another thing that Victor Houghton says in that video is that there's a difference between a key and a mode. Modes are not keys, but they share the same key signatures as a key. So let's say we want to take this exercise and practice a mode, let's say Lydian. I would just go in iReal Pro and change the chord to a F major 7 sharp 11. Okay, so let's just repeat what we're doing here. So I have my backing track and I set it to transpose a fourth every time. I could go the other direction. I would just so now I'm going counterclockwise on the circle of fifths. I could just turn the page upside down and do it the other way, right? So let's just repeat again what we're doing. We have 7 notes randomly dispersed as a phrase, and first you play only that line. But if that's too easy for you, then you will add notes to it. It could be like a triad, or you don't want to make it too difficult, but let's do a melody, like a motif, a phrase. I'm gonna pick this tune. My favorite things. So that melody, I go up a fifth. I'm just gonna do that. So up a fifth and down a fourth and back. So then I'm gonna play that intervallic shape from every note. And then A, F. So now I'm in F Lydian, right? So if I want to practice Lydian, I want to start with the chord that has no sharps or flats, which is F Lydian. So that's the first chord, and then the next is going to be B flat Lydian. So I'm going counterclockwise on the circle of fifths. So I'll show you what it sounds like. So sometimes I'm calling out the next key, and sometimes I'm calling out the next note I'm playing. I hope I'm not confusing you. That's because sometimes the next note is kind of hard to find, so I'm trying to sing it and say the note name. That's just a habit. So what are the benefits from practicing this way? First off, the idea is to be better at playing in all keys, and now we know what all keys are. And so if you're struggling, let's say you do what I just did there. Let's say you would get to G flat Lydian. I didn't go through all the keys just now because it would take forever. I don't want to bore you to death. But when I'm doing this exercise, I obviously play through every key. But let's say I get to G flat and I'm struggling and I can't find the notes. Then I know, okay, this is what I need to work on. So you're actually working on practicing in every key. So that's the obvious thing that we're doing, the main objective of this exercise. But you're also working on your ear training because you need to be able to hear these notes. You could do this exercise without your instrument and try to sing it, because we need to be able to imagine these things when we're playing. If I know the first phrase is this, that's a little motif, a musical idea. I want to be able to go anywhere with that idea. But in order to do that, I need to kind of hear it, or not hear it, but hear it in my mind, right? Before I play it. Because ideally, you want your imagination to decide what you're playing, and then the fingers to go there, what you're hearing in your mind, rather than the fingers just running up and down. Because what happens if let's say I would just practice this, I would just turn on the backing track. I would just probably play a bunch of nonsense, right? And we fall into habits. That's just my fingers playing shapes, familiar patterns that I've practiced. I practiced in the past scales and stuff, and arpeggios and sequences and all that. Nothing wrong with that. We should do that, obviously, but this is something else. We're trying to get away from that. Something I noticed when you have students try to improvise and they're not super used to it. You show them a scale or something, they just start playing stepwise. They just play the scale up and down with some variation. But you want to be able to play like an idea, and then to give the listener something to hold on to. That's what I love about jazz improvisation, or good improvisers. If they play something and I hear it, and then they can take that idea and do something with it, that so I can follow along when I'm listening. That's not just for improvisation, but good music. Usually there's a phrase and you hear it and then you can follow that phrase. So the way he set up this page was he has a bunch of those 7-note phrases and then all the key signatures on top, so you can kind of follow along when you're practicing. And then you can turn the page upside down and do everything, give you another set of options. I guess that's why he calls it the diatonic magic square. I'm not even entirely sure that I understand the exercise properly. Maybe I'm just making up my own. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as we're learning something. And I think that's the sign of a good exercise, or a good method book. It's not, you can make up your own practice routines based on what's in this book. You could also, for us guitar players, we could decide to work on a specific area on the guitar, on the fretboard, or try to stay in the position, or try to play horizontally. There's a lot of things you can do with this. You could try to play a chord, like a shell voicing from each note, make it even more difficult. So this book is absolutely amazing. It's one of the best books I know. I think it's up there with like the Lydian chromatic concept. It's that of an important book, both in terms of, so it's just not just the harmonic content, it's the rhythmic the rhythmic content of this book is unbelievable. The way he explains polyrhythms is just amazing. And I have made a video in the past where I talk a little bit about that. And polypulse, there's pick control exercises, and he talks about tuning. He talks about chord, like different triadic ideas. Some of the stuff is really, really advanced and like academic, or I would not academic, but technical when he talks about tuning, for example. But it also, so some of it goes over my head, but at the same time, it's one of those books that you can have for the rest of your life. And I just picked up this exercise the other day. I picked up the book and I saw that exercise. I hadn't seen it before. It was just like, it's right there. And I've been working on this for the last couple of days. So I wanted to share that with you, and I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, I shall see you next time.